Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Wombo Combo Podcast, episode number 6 to be precise, but an episode where we get to talk Major. The Major has finally begun this last weekend, so already plenty to discuss when it comes to that. And the good thing about it, too, is that there's still a lot of Major left all throughout the week into next weekend. So this podcast show, obviously a lot of it's going to really be centered around the Major, and looking forward to having some fun discussion. I'm BreakyCPK, as always, joined by BSJ. BSJ, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. There's been some solid surprises so far in the Major. So despite what we most would consider a kind of stale meta, it's still been interesting for me to watch these games.
Yeah, there's obviously been some interesting results, as well as definitely some quirky hero picks here and there, as you'd expect in a Major when 16 teams are playing from all over the world. Anything can happen. So our hopefully our last event with this patch, but still bringing entertainment. Before we get too much into the discussion, one thing I do want to note is that Prediction is helping to give back for the holidays. You can support the Center for Education Innovation to help kids' life skills through esports. You can make a difference for Giving Tuesday by going to bit.ly/CEIES or CEIE Sports. So there you go. You can check it out there for a good cause. All right, but as far as this show is concerned, again, a lot of Major discussion. And actually, we're going to be joined by an awesome guest as a result. Somebody that's not only doing Major coverage, but of course is coming off the minor. The one and only LD from Beyond the Summit will be joining us. Obviously, a longtime cast in the scene, and definitely I consider a friend at least. So I'm really excited to have him on. We'll bring him on in about 10 minutes from now, but I'm sure he'll have plenty to say when it comes to this event.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk to one of the legendary greats of the Dota casting scene, especially now that he's back.
Yeah.
Always the pogs and chat and everything whenever you see LD casting.
That's something else, of course, I plan to talk with him about. See what the deal is there, right? Because as you mentioned, he's back, and what does that really mean for him and his future plans? So that's just one of the several questions we'll have for him when we do bring him on. But we figured before we bring it on, we wanted to give ourselves a chance, before the limelight's on LD, understandably, to discuss the Major and at least so far how it's played out. And there's a couple of storylines, certainly, I think, that are worth bringing up and kind of talking as a whole. And to start it off, one of the biggest ones, of course, is the success of North America Dota. I mean,
let's go.
Right? Like, let's go America. I mean, you and I both NA fans, obviously, when it comes to Dota. But I can't say either one of us predicted this, certainly. But how about this J-Storm right now, even as we're doing this live podcast? They're currently in the upper bracket finals as they even defeated Liquid. Also coming out of their J-Storm came out of their group in second place, but they got to winners as a result. They defeated Liquid 2-1. So now they are matched up against TNC, and then both Fighting Pandas and Evil Geniuses happening to get second place for Fighting Pandas and first place, or actually they both got second place, in their groups as well, but that allowed them to get to winners. They play later today as we're doing this live show here, but NA right now, all three of the teams are still alive in the top side of the bracket. That is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's first for everything, I guess. I think the biggest surprises are, I guess, for me, it's not on the side necessarily of NA, but on the side of, the other teams. So eHome, I thought, was going to put on a better showing, so obviously dropping to Fighting Pandas. I really thought that Team Aster was going to put on a better showing, and Team Liquid was going to put on a worser showing. So it's kind of funny how that flip-flopped in my head. I thought it was going to be EG, then Aster, then Liquid in that group. And then in the other side, I think Gambit, you have your next point up here is the CIS region. I think Gambit was just entirely flopped. After watching them at ESL, they got second place. They went 5 games against TNC. I was really high hopes for this team. And it's just funny because I watched that event in great depth. So to see that event come, because I was working it, to have that event turn into this one where Liquid looked like they were in shambles, and then Gambit looked like they had a lot of upward potential. And then you come to this event and, Liquid's 2-0 in their group. Obviously, they dropped out of the winner's bracket. And then on the other hand, all 4 teams that got bottom in their group dropped out. So the teams that were bottom of the group clearly were the worst in the tournament. They all lost both series they played in the group stage, and then they lost their best of one in the lower brackets. So, I will attribute NA. I'll try to give it the props when it's due, but I also think it has to do with underwhelming performances from other regions.
And that's fair. We obviously have to look at results. You have to look at the matches. So it's not just simply, NA still 3 teams in the winners bracket. They must be the best region in the world right now. I mean, that's not necessarily the case. This kind of goes back to the format. And I know we've had a discussion in previous podcast shows about it. It is the 4 groups GSL format, as they like to call it, which essentially is this mini double elimination. My only issue with it is that it seems like the amount of teams that you get to compete against is somewhat small, and it really does a lot of ways come down to maybe the matchups within your group and how you seed. So that does take into consideration. I really wish it was at least like 2 groups of 8, maybe more of that Swiss format or round robin to be a little more fair. Not the case though. It is what it is. So
yeah, I agree. It definitely, like, if one team overperforms or one team underperforms because of the format, it will drastically influence a team's capability of being in the upper bracket or not.
Yeah. And it's funny, as I actually reminded myself as I'm going through the 3 NA teams, the fact that all the NA teams actually finished second, and of course the most notable one certainly has to be Evil Geniuses. They did not win their group. That was because a Team Liquid actually defeated them 2-1 in their winner match series in that group. So Liquid looking hot there. Then they lose earlier today. Again, as we're doing this live recording, they lost to J-Storm in their first round matchup. So certainly J-Storm definitely has something going, who, like I said, also finished second in their group. Fighting Pandas, to me, is a little bit of the surprise. I will say, they had to beat eHome eventually. They actually lost to EMI. I actually casted that series. They did look a little flat, and kind of as we almost expected them to going into this event. But then on the other side of it, eHome wasn't necessarily their strongest performance either. And of course, as mentioned, they then lost to them in that decider match, which allowed Fighting Pandas to get to the winner. So you look at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, not to overreact, but still, I mean, these are facts. The 3 NA teams are in the top portion, which is no doubt pretty crazy in itself. I will say Fighting Pandas plays Vici Gaming later today in the first series. That is a 2-0 Vici Gaming for me, pretty handily, considering I have them being a top 3 team. IG versus EG, though, that is going to be one of the better series, I think, of this whole tournament.
Yeah, I'm super hyped for that one. EG, they could have won their group, right? But the way that the groups work is that first place plays the second place. So they knew that the other NA teams weren't going to win their groups, right? So they knew if they got first, they would be playing against another NA team, which is not what you want to be doing, right? Patriotism, united, etc. And you gotta make sure everyone's able to stay in past the first round. But in all honesty, that is the hypest game for me. We talked about IG last week being super exciting to watch, like coming into the major. Last year they had Vici Gaming that came out of the minor and ended up winning the major. I think we were both on the same page that IG could potentially do that as well, just how good they looked during the minor. And there's a real question of what they would turn that into going to the major. I will say, though, they haven't proved themselves yet. They've beaten J-Storm, Beast Coast, and like the group of J-Storm, Beast Coast, and Gambit, which has not proven to be all that impressive just yet. Yes, J-Storm beat Liquid, but I need to see Vici or TNC get contested. Those are the 2 teams for me that stand above the rest now. Yeah. TNC was my favorite going into the major. So these 2 teams have proven, I think what I love about watching hero teams like TNC is they just win with some of the weirdest stuff. Like just first rounding the Mag PA and then doing Venomancer plus the Prophet. That's their whole idea is we're going to pick 3 heroes that shove lanes, and then we're going to have PA hit jungle creeps. And I just think it seems so simple on paper, but they're able to make it work against lineups where they're forcing their opponent to pick Night Stalker because they pick it.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
They just prove that they can own it. It's really cool the way TNC works, right? Because we saw them in ESL picking Morph Shaker, and then the other team would pick Morph Shaker, and then they would dismantle it, and you're like, oh, Morph Shaker doesn't look that great when they're not playing it. And same thing with heroes like Night Stalker. So very cool to watch that kind of team and to see them just look that. Even though they lost one game to Alliance, I still think they've looked almost certainly dominant throughout the course of this tournament so far.
Yeah, it's also, I actually had the chance to cast them in the Group A matches there in both of their series, and they absolutely looked dominant. I mean, of course, Unknown, now not surprising they beat them 2-0 like they did. eHome, a little bit more solid of a challenge, but eHome actually let them get that Earthshaker Morphling combo that we talk about, and that is probably the most ridiculous duo right now, it's safe to say. Certainly getting toned down on the patch, but you hinted at it as well. The safe play Night Stalker, Gabby playing that Night Stalker, man. It's that's been an interesting development within this later on in the meta, the current patch that we have, and TNC just this very aggressive team in the first place. It's been fun to watch that work. I will say in the Alliance series though, the one game that they lost, Alliance actually drafted the safe lane Night Stalker themselves. Nico Baby ended up playing it, and that's the game that Alliance won. It took like 70 minutes, I think. It went really long, but ultimately Alliance was able to be victorious in that first game. But then the next two went the way of TNC, as we mentioned. So it's going to be interesting to continue to see these development in these strategies as we always have with this tournament, of course. And going back to last week's show, we gave our early predictions as far as maybe top 3 teams. Gambit was one of my top 3, so touching back on that, Gambit certainly not looking that great. I will say in their group they lost 2-1 to J-Storm, they lost 2-1 to Beast Coast, so obviously going 3 games in both of those series, but certainly series that they are very capable of winning. And then they dropped their best out of 1 to Team Aster, which is a Chinese team that can be hit or miss, and at least in that case they were hit despite finishing bottom 2 in their group. But yeah, as a region, man, CIS, Gambit, and Team Spirit, after finishing so well in the minor with the CIS teams, I'm sitting here thinking, CIS, at least one of these teams was going to perform well, but not the case. So a little bit of mix of the group stages, and again, this best of 1 losers bracket, so much can happen, but that is what happened in the end. So, and then one more thing with the lower bracket, this morning actually, as I caught up, I was able to catch the Beast Coast Adroit series. Wow, Adroit was up 20,000 or so net worth earlier on in the game. They did have a very farmed Alchemist. Adroit should have won this game, but they overstepped a little bit going into the base. And Beast Coast, you got to give them credit. They played with composure to an extent. And Hector on his lifestealer, he absolutely carried for Beast Coast. So Beast Coast was on the verge, though, of being knocked out in that 13-16 spot. And I was getting ready to think about what I was going to say on the podcast today about South American Dota, and Beast Coast needing to really prove themselves. They got to step up. They're still in it, though. They're still in it. We'll see how much further they make it, but at least Beast Coast is still alive for now, albeit it was very close.
To be fair, Beast Coast wins have never been clean, even when they're at TI, even when they're at ESL. I watch their games, and the almost defining trait that I watch of them winning games is it feels like the opponent should have won, and then they win.
Yeah.
So it's kind of deceiving to me to say that specifically about Beast Coast, just because so often I think their strength comes through chaos that they create in the game and the ability to force the opponent to make mistakes that they wouldn't otherwise make. And so it's just funny. You look at the kill score, it's 41-25 in favor of Adroit, and that's about the most Beast Coast type of victory you could imagine. So obviously they still have a lot to prove, but in no way is it surprising to me that that's how they pull out their best at 1.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. But again, they're still alive, and 12 teams now remain. Of course, so just to be clear, Spirit, Gambit, and Unknown and Android are the 4 teams that are so far eliminated at the Major, as again, we're doing this live show. So we've talked enough ourselves about the Major, though. I think it's time for join up. I'm going to go ahead and have LD join us on the call. Want to make sure graphics look good when he does, so we'll be joining here in a second. But this Major, it's been a lot of fun so far. The fact that it's only 2 days in is just another crazy thing when you really think about it. I guess really 3 days in now, technically, but we still have so much more to come. All right, it looks like he has made it. And
hello.
Hey, LD, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome. Happy to have you on. And I know with your sleep schedule right now, it's a little rough for you, so I appreciate you joining us.
I have the easier schedule. I'm doing the first shift, so it's it's 6 p.m. to midnight. Not too bad. Some of the other boys have a little rougher though. They're like midnight until 6 a.m. or I think 2 days ago it went until like 9 a.m. local time.
Okay.
So I don't have the graveyard shift, but yeah, it's fun.
Happy to have you on. Well, how has the event been so far for you? I mean, how has it been casting the major so far?
It's been good. It's always weird not being there with the crowd. Even though it's in China and like our audio wouldn't be broadcast to the audience. Like you don't get the feedback of like them getting hyped up for the key moments. So it feels like especially as like a play-by-play cast, you kind of have to try to bring a little bit of extra energy. But it's just hard. You can't replicate that feeling of like the crowd roaring. And obviously we're not at the stage where like you'd expect like a big live audience. Most of the majors tend to only do like the last 3 to 4 days in a stadium. But I think, it does feel a little less hype. But the Dota's been pretty entertaining. I know it, for me at least. I know a lot of people are sick of the patch. Ready for a new one. I didn't have to cast this patch, so I did watch a lot of it, but I think it's a little different when you're like casually spectating. So yeah, I've been having fun, but I do feel like a little something is missing.
Yeah, fair enough, but there is still, again, plenty to come. As far as results go when it comes to the matches, are there any teams in this event that have surprised you specifically that you're entertained to see more of?
Well, I think the biggest surprise overall has been IG. Not so much at this event because I think they looked like they had some serious swagger at the summit. But if you go back to like before the minor, people might have thought they would win the minor. I think they're probably in most people's top 2 or 3. Fair number of people were saying Geek Fam. I don't think Chaos or Quincy Crew was really even getting that much, fan belief. And the CIS team, people were kind of looking down their nose at, saying, "Oh, VP's not even there." But I think like if you look from before the minor to now, IG has just like the way they're winning, like they just play with a swagger and almost like cockiness to their play. Sometimes a bit suicidal. Emo's a little clowny. JT, a lot of. Bombast and gusto, like he was talking trash a lot at the summit. But I think the way that like a relatively inexperienced team is performing so far is pretty impressive to me. So I think they're the biggest overall surprise, specifically at the major. I would say J Storm. I had not watched them that much in the qualifier, but honestly, I did not really believe in this team. I think Liquid looked real shaky in their best of 3 yesterday. So I don't know how much credence I give to that J-Storm win, but, they're top 6 at the major. NA Dota's looking good. All 3 NA teams still in the upper bracket. Yeah. 50% of the upper bracket teams are from NA. We'll see if that lasts after today.
Probably.
Yeah, I think J-Storm is probably the biggest surprise within the major itself.
Yeah, J-Storm, absolutely. And I'd mentioned on our previous podcast, to me, they're a team that's like, I could see them getting top 4, but I could also see them being eliminated and in a best of 1 lower finals, or lower bracket, excuse me. So, hey, they're looking like a team that potentially could be top 4 at this rate. They obviously go up against TNC coming up here. By the way, are you going to be, Kat, you mentioned you're liking to watch some Invictus Gaming. Of course, they were the minor winners after all, so you got to know them very well. They match up against EG tonight. Are you casting that series?
No, I think that one is Grant and Fogged. So we get a nice unbiased NA Dota cast to bring you the match. But I mean, honestly, like as far as like non-NA teams go, I think IG, it feels like a team that American fans can get excited about just because like they play very up-tempo, they play very aggressive. They're not that like old stereotype of like, Chinese Dota where they're just farming and playing defensively and that they're picking Pudge and diving towers. So, even if IG takes it, I think it'll be fun to watch. And EG should win, on paper. Like, this is a superstar roster. Anything less than winning this major is a disappointment, I think, for EG fans. Most likely they still can get back to TI even if they underperform at this major. But it is your best shot to just, secure a strong position in the DPC early.
Well, it's something we have to constantly remind people of, is I'm sure they're aware, but you have Secret, you have OG, you have X-Liquid. They're not at this event, and they are likely to be at future events, of course. So, again, there's that much more opportunity at this major to earn points. So, yeah, a team like EG certainly should be one of, if not the favored. So, they have a long journey ahead of them still, but it's going to be fun to continue to watch it develop. But Talking more, well, instead of talking more about the Major, though, again, you guys are coming fresh off of the Summit event, so it's been an interesting lineup for you in terms of you had your Summit, which I'm sure had a lot of preparation going into, and now here you are, not much of a break in between, now casting the Major from the BTS studios. How hectic has it been these last couple of months specifically with the Dota scene, at least?
Yeah, so for me personally, my involvement is mostly just casting. You know, I am like somewhat involved in all of our events, whether they're Dota or Smash or CS:GO. But Dota generally is not really like, I'm not too involved in the planning and operational side. I think it's been a big grind mainly for the people behind the scenes, like our broadcast and production team. Setting up for the Summit means like you've got 55 player PCs, monitors that all have to be tested, configured, and nothing really replicates like when you put a pro in there, because even like the slightest lag is something they'll notice and a production guy may not. So setting up for that event, our first live audience at the minor, and then straight into preparation for the Major, like they've been feeling the grind really hard. For me, it's been, pretty chill. I don't need to do 2 BO3s a day. I've got other stuff I'm working on, but the Dota side of it is, it's been a good time. But I got to, give some love to the people behind the scenes who make casting a lot easier and less stressful.
Sure. But again, you have the knowledge. Maybe yourself hasn't been as involved in it, but you have the knowledge. I mean, I'm actually curious. Summit's been a very successful event over time. Obviously, it has this very niche kind of style to an event, a very fun, laid-back atmosphere. But as you mentioned, this is the first time you really had the live crowd, especially. This was an official DPC event. What did that entail, and how were you nervous at all that this was going to be difficult to pull off, or were you confident with your team and what you guys could do?
There's always things to worry about with every event, even if you copy the formula completely. And so this, was a twist, but man, our first Dota Summit, like I was running cables for the entire production setup all night. I did not sleep. There's actually footage of me like being told to go to bed by K-Poptosis, Brian Heron, who was our producer back then, at like 2 p.m. I literally was like conking out in the middle of the cast on the first day because I was so tired. So compared to that event where like we were losing internet, PCs were crashing, we didn't even know if we were going to pull the damn thing off. We had fans showing up to the house saying, hey, I heard Burning's here. Can I get his autograph? Burning had not arrived yet. Taking pictures of the house, putting them on Scammer, like neighbors getting pissed off. Like compared to that, I don't know if anything will ever beat that level of stress and like, holy shit, can we even do this? And back then it was like a team of 4 or 5 people. Now we have 25 people in the US office and like 30 something total. So it's not like a 3-4 man operation anymore behind the scenes. So yeah, definitely stressful. It's like, oh my god, what if the fans bother the players? What if the talent get annoyed? What if it kills the vibe? But I think the talent that we brought out really did a great job. Like Slacks, all the fans were saying how much like it was great to interact with him. They really had a good time, not just when he's on camera, but just like he'll just hang out and play Smash with them. Grant is the same way. Really all the talent were very social with the fans. So I think they felt like they got like a great behind the scenes experience. It is a little interesting having a minor where there is such like a big, prize, the DPC major slot, up for grabs. But I think the team still made it pretty fun. Like Quincy Crew was casting quite a bit, or Chaos, and JT was talking smack. Even 178, had some comments. So I feel like the team's kind of, a lot of lesser known teams, it actually lends well to the Summit format because they want to grow their brands. They've seen some of these bigger names in the past, use that platform. No tail back in the So Smart days and things like that. So, maybe wanting to, stake their own little claim to fame, even if it is a minor and a lot at stake.
Absolutely. BSJ, you got any questions?
Oh, my major thing so since you stopped casting, I've kind of begun casting. I kind of never really overlapped that together.
Over, yeah.
And it's just funny.
You were working CI, man,
what I'm saying is like, that's obviously not, the emphasis is you right now, because I'm wondering, I watch your stream, I watched your cast yesterday, and obviously you have your one-liners in the game, that are part of the compendium. And I was wondering, like, do those like zingers, the like gotcha like little sayings you use, do you like ever think of those ahead of time in the game, or do they just happen in the middle of the team fight like very naturally? I can't recall exactly what you said yesterday, but they're like diving the base.
Defense of the Ancients. Yeah, it's the very end of the game, I think.
Yeah, you just said like 3 lines in one team fight where I was like, wow, where does he come up with this crap? Like, it flows well. Like, it really does. I think it's super entertaining. But, like, is that something that naturally came to you as a caster, or you practice that for casting? Is that just who you are? I wanted
I think, well, obviously you can't really prepare for that, right? Because that was like a 70-minute game with a 60K net worth lead and defending against mega creeps. So that one definitely not rehearsed. I don't really rehearse lines or try to come up with like stuff in advance. I know some casters do that, but it's usually more for jokes or like little zingers. Like Blitz used to do that when we were casting, like, how am I going to burn LD at the Frankfurt Major? Well, we couldn't get Toby, so, we got LD here. So I think like more like interactions with your co-caster are things that you can rehearse. But I think, because what you say is so dependent on what's going on in the game, it's really hard to plan in advance, at least for me. So I'm all improv, which means sometimes you whiff, like if like the fans decide they like your commentary, I think they tend to make you look good. Like they're your own best promoters because they clip the moments that are good. They don't clip the moments where you fumble and then, make the hate threads about you. Not to say that the tides can never turn against someone who's, formerly well-liked. I'd say Semler in CSGO is a good example of that. Used to be beloved and the fans kind of turned on him. So he went to Overwatch. Everyone has their ups and downs, but I do think like it's kind of like the social media age, right? Like, you see people's you see what people want to show you about their lives on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And I think for every one of those moments where like I say something it's hopefully sharp or insightful or funny, there's definitely those moments where like I either say something raw or I kind of fumble. But yeah, I'm all improv. I don't really rehearse anything.
I was just curious because it's something where a lot of viewers, like I used to watch Dota all the time back when you were casting, but you kind of forget what people bring to the table, and you're watching like, oh yeah, that's why I remember them being good at what they do. So for me, since I started casting, I'll sometimes kind of study other casters, and since I hadn't really had the chance, like I look at casting a different way now than I did 2-3 years ago. So that's why I was really wondering. I hadn't looked at someone like yourselves casting before this tournament itself. So it's been quite fascinating. So I appreciate the background on that one.
Yeah, I think for me, my strength is more like wordplay and, those little moments. You look at like Toby, he's just like raw hype and energy in team fights. Owen is just that insane stamina and like kind of the horse race thing, like and then going crazy when, things really exciting happen. Not to say I can't bring the hype, but I don't think that's my biggest strength. So, I try to find something memorable to say to really make people remember the fight.
Yeah, right on.
Plenty of those lines. And kind of on that topic here, you mentioned more recently that, again, you're coming back to casting. I want to kind of clear it up here. So are you back to full-time Dota casting now? Is this your thing once again?
Okay, so I'm never going to be full-time the way that I was like when I started. So when we started Beyond the Summit, towards the end of 2012, after TI2 was when we really got serious about it. It was a Dota studio, and it was a 2-man Dota studio. So basically all we did was cast Dota, right? Now we're a company, we're running events for 10 other games, or we've run events for 10 other titles. And I think we're doing like at least 8 or 9 just next year alone. And we do a lot of other stuff besides our own summit events. So, I'm never going to be full time. All I do is cast and live, breathe Dota, as much as, that was a wonderful stage of my life. I'm in my 30s. I have a dog to take care of, and she's 1 year old and she's a lab. So that's like basically like having a baby who can, run 5 miles a day. It's a lot of work, and I think like, honestly, it was too much for me. Especially the traveling, like it's very hard to maintain. I'm sure you guys know this, like any kind of diet, consistent exercise regime, your sleep's a mess. Not to say it's not a privilege to get to travel the world and talk about video games for a living, but it is also a grind to do it full time. So I'm enjoying it. I think if events want to hire me, I will take future gigs and I'll see like how it goes, but I'm not going to be like trying to get every gig I can, casting 4 events a month, constantly on the road. That would be a disservice to everyone to be on the summit. I think there's a lot of other great talent out there who deserve opportunities. And frankly, like, I just don't want to live that lifestyle. So I think you'll see me cast in the future. It just happened to work out that, we were hosting the first minor here in LA. So it was very easy for me to cast that. And then the major coverage happened to be offsite. So things just kind of aligned that I'm doing these 2 events back to back. I don't think I'm going to be doing every event moving forward, but I'm also not ruling out like taking opportunities as they, come if they make sense.
Very cool. I mean,
that mindset.
You mentioned that obviously BTS, and we know this, BTS has been very involved in other games, and not just Dota. So not to go too off topic here, but again, personally, I'm just more curious. Yourself, being a very good caster within Dota, have you thought about casting other games or some of these other titles that BTS is running?
Oh yeah, I'm a great Overwatch caster. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to pick up other games. I know some casters have successfully made the transition. Probably the most notable is like Doa, Monte Cristo going from League to Overwatch, and I think Semler did the same from CSGO to Overwatch. I think you have to be a full-time talent to switch games. It's a lot easier to, it's like losing weight, right? It's a lot easier to maintain a weight than it is to lose weight. So you like really have to invest yourself, and I think it's similar with casting, like to learn how to commentate a new game, to learn the history of the players, the memes, the storylines, the mechanics, the patch, and all that stuff. That's just a whole nother level of commitment. So I don't really see myself casting other games, but who knows? Maybe there'll be something I just fall in love with, and then that could change. But for now, I don't see it happening.
We're still also young, LD, so there's still plenty of time ahead of us.
I don't know, man. I'm feeling my years. These late night shifts are rough, and you definitely got to take care of yourself. Yeah. So I'm trying to be a healthier human being nowadays, but it is tough.
All right, don't want to hold you on here too much longer, but I do have a couple of questions I certainly need answering. One is actually from one of our viewers in chat, I see. Wants to know, and I'm genuinely curious as well, about Purge's segment that he had with the ironing the shirt. Whose idea was that? Where the hell did that come from?
So, I think the general idea for the show was basically we wanted to, we knew the coverage wasn't going to be in China. That'd probably come as a little bit of a disappointment to fans. We didn't just want to copy TI. They have the late night show. And the late night show here would be like starting like anywhere from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning Pacific time, depending on when the games happen to end, because they play matches back to back. They don't like wait if one match ends early. So we didn't want to do an end of the day show, and the timing just made sense to do something at the start of the day. So that's why it's a morning show. Well, I guess it's technically the evening here, but for a lot of the viewers, it is morning time. I believe it was Dakota who decided Purge would be great for it. He's also local to us, so it's a little bit easier. As far as like the different segments in the show, I think like the general like kind of categories, like having like the Purge shows you how to do something, the viewer question segment, I don't even know who came up with the book reading thing, but it's some combination of Dakota and Purge. I think Purge told me he pretty much didn't rehearse any of that stuff. He had a few kind of jokes or lines that he prepared during rehearsal, but it was mostly off the cuff. It's not like he's very off a script. So, the man knows how to deliver some dry humor. I'll tell you what.
That's absolutely true. I'll tell you, he's
gotten really funny
life
the last couple of years. Sorry, what was that?
I said when you're around him in real life, it's like you're just like, what? Like half the time you don't even think he's joking, and you're laughing at it, and then you realize he is joking.
He's like so deadpan. It's like there might be something dead inside of him because I don't know how he can pull it off so consistently. But then you realize he's kidding. He's got that little glint in his eye, and the delivery makes it for sure.
I agree.
Look forward to more of that.
Yeah, credit to Dakota and Purge. I think it's pretty much been the two of them.
Awesome. And I'm sure still more to come again as we got the whole week here into the weekend. So
yeah, hopefully I'm not spoiling anything too much, but Purge will be teaching something new every night. So you can look forward to that. More highlights, some guests, some viewer questions.
Nice.
We'll have the whole shebang for you guys tonight and the rest of the major.
Great stuff.
Nice.
All right, the final ultimate question: who's going to win MDL? I got to put you on the spot. Who do you have winning it all?
Oh, that's one. Okay, so I feel like it's kind of cheating to even say TNC because we've already seen that half of the bracket. I'm also not that sold on them. They look kind of shaky. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say I think IG can do it. I think they come in with insane momentum. To me, they're either gonna like dominate this major and go all the way, or they're just gonna blame out, be way over aggressive against EG and completely implode. But, I'll put my chips on IG and, hopefully they make the Dota Summit look good and, get some of that DPC minor hate to dissipate. Cool to see a minor champ win a major.
Yeah.
And this, if there's ever one to win, this is probably it with the big four out of the picture.
Yeah, we had one last year, and we had that happen last year once, and definitely both BSJ and I are sold on IG having a good chance. So we'll see. There's we'll find out ultimately into the weekend how it all plays out here. But LD, I want to thank you as always for joining us. Really do appreciate it. Any shout outs? Anything else before we let you go?
Shout out to you two fine gentlemen. Been listening to the last few podcasts. It is hard to stick with a podcast in Dota 2 with all the tournaments happening, casting commitments, streaming. But, shout out to promo code BSJ, and thanks for having me on. And I guess big shout out to the whole crew Beyond the Summit for making the minor possible, making the major possible on such a back-to-back schedule. They've been really grinding on the production team, and all the viewers at home for watching.
All right, LD, thanks again. I know the hours are tough right now, so I really do appreciate you joining us, and we'll be watching tonight, man.
All right, take care, guys.
You too.
All right, so again, LD joining us on the podcast. Was expecting it to be some good content, and he definitely delivered right there. Talked about plenty of things, from obviously the minor to what his thoughts on the major and his personal career a little bit. So interesting to hear across the board right there. But I do got to say, one thing that was really interesting to me to hear was he's not as involved behind the scenes as I thought he might have been. Obviously, I know he is very important when it comes to BTS and everything, but right now he's just enjoying casting. So that's that's good for him. Obviously, it could be a stressful job, but it sounds like they do have a really good team now. I've had the chance, I know you have as well, to meet a lot of their behind the scenes team, especially, and they're pulling off some good content with not only Dota and all their games. And Beyond the Summit certainly has had an enjoyable journey to watch, and looking forward to seeing much more of it.
Yeah, I can relate to him in a lot of ways when you talk about like the early days of Beyond the Summit as like a streamer myself. When you're trying to get noticed or put on the map or in general have your content appreciated, it just takes twice as much work than is sustainable, honestly. You just can't do that forever. And so I can respect that he's like, yes, I'm very interested in Dota still, and I would love to cast, but I just can't do that anymore. And I can relate to that as much as anyone else. In the esports scene for myself, I used to stream 60 hours a week plus do other stuff. And it's just like eventually your body just can't handle it anymore. I mean, it's really that simple. So I like to see that he comes back. I honestly couldn't remember what his casting was like compared to from my viewpoint now. You just see it in a whole different light once you start doing it yourself. And I thoroughly find him very entertaining. I think his like one-line zingers, I'm like, oh, that's random. Like that's a nice little into the team fight that just occurred in front of me. But that's just something that I wouldn't do, so I find it fascinating for people to have a different take on something I do as well. So very much enjoy watching him cast.
Yeah, it's we're going to see more of him tonight and throughout the rest of the event. And like I said, I don't know if that's the line that you're getting at, but again, there was the one line last night that he had that was in that first series, that game one of TNC versus Alliance at the very end. He's like, "This is Defense of the Ancients, baby!" as they were attacking the throne and trying to destroy it. It was it's difficult to do that, and I've maybe had the chance to do a couple in my time, but he's certainly the king of it. Is LD so. It's fun.
The classic WoW himself,
Yeah, there's been some good ones there. All right, so not don't want to keep things too much longer on this show, but I still think a couple more topics to go over before we do wrap things up as a whole, but still sticking with the major, of course. Figure just kind of some straight up questions, some fill in the blanks to help with some discussion here as we move forward into the week and then, of course, into the weekend and finding out the MDL champion. The first one being the team that's likely to have the best run currently in the lower bracket. So again, it's depending on when you're listening to the show, it could be a little bit different. But as we're live recording, we have Liquid versus eHome, Alliance versus Aster, and then you also have Fnatic and Beast Coast are down there. So right now 6 teams are down there as we see. Of those 6 teams, who do we have having the best chance to go the farthest?
I think if Fnatic's able to take out either IG or EG, I think they're going to be the most impactful from the lower bracket. I think they have one of the hardest groups. Vici and Alliance, probably the strongest duo, I would say, that qualified to upper bracket. Like if you combine the first and second team of both groups, I think that's the strongest too. So I think Fnatic, even though they're like in there with Alliance, I'm going to make a bold prediction based on what I saw in the group and say that IG is going to beat EG and then EG is going to lose to Fnatic. I think that's my bold prediction. So I think Fnatic's going to manage to take that game, and they're going to keep going maybe top 3, top 4 for Fnatic.
Wow, that's a bold prediction. So you have EG getting knocked out in the round of 2 in the lower bracket. Yeah, man.
I mean, I didn't think this would ever happen at the start of the tournament, but based on who they're playing, if they were to lose, and obviously they're playing IG now, and if they were to lose, they'd play Fnatic. I think this is like the best script possible for that exact scenario to occur. So I will not even say that I fully believe it's likely, but I think it's way more possible than people are saying it is.
Sure.
Or like the people would initially think it is. And I don't think I'm like crazy to predict that could happen.
I mean, that's fair. They lost to Liquid 2-1, and we're sitting here not having a lot of hype on Liquid coming into this event. So I suppose, and this is a new roster, so yeah, it's you kind of maybe have to remind yourself of that. So yeah, maybe it isn't as crazy ridiculous of a statement to make. I don't know if I'm sold on that, but that is certainly a bold prediction right there. As far as the 6 teams that I have moving further and having the best chance, I honestly like Alliance on what they're doing recently. Yeah. I haven't been the most sold on them in the early parts of the season with the roster when it was announced. It's a very good one, but I didn't even think that they were going to be better than the old Alliance squad. But frankly, so far it feels like that they have been, and they're matched up against Aster right now, but it's possible they could play Liquid actually in the next round if it lines up that way. So where they both win, that's going to be a fun one, of course, and they could certainly go, dare I say, all the way to the finals even. Again, when you remind that there's 3 of the big name teams are not even in this event because of taking the break. So it is open, and I have Alliance. So that's going to be my bold prediction. Alliance going to the finals. There you go.
I don't think that's too far-fetched at all. That'd be my other team. Would be Alliance for sure.
Yeah. All right, another question. The team that has impressed me, impressed us, or me, whatever, the most at this event is blank. So I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about right there. But is there another team that maybe stands out, if anything?
It's just IG. IG time and time again here. I mentioned it last week. I mentioned it before the minor. It's not that I didn't expect this, but I just want them to keep going. And I'm on the hype train. I think them and TNC are the 2 teams to beat in the sense that they have their own play style, and you have to actually address it in order to beat them. Like, you can't just do your own thing and beat them. That's kind of what I feel about these 2 teams, which is really unique. I'm not saying they're unbeatable, but a lot of times a really good team like Vici or EG can just beat teams by doing their own thing. And I don't think that's going to work against TNC and IG for this tournament. So IG is my team.
Okay. I'll go with TNC. TNC with the ESL victory. Yes, that was a good victory, but as we're even seeing now, Gambit losing in the lower bracket best of 1. That was a team they beat in 5 games in the grand final. So it's like you take that in consideration too. Really was that the most impressive tournament win. but they're proving right now that they are a hot team. They're not afraid to run their own strategies. We talked about the safe lane Night Stalker. Obviously, they love running that whole Morphling Earthshaker and can also go against it if the other team picks it against them. So they're right now against J-Storm in that upper bracket final. Certainly a very winnable match for them there. This is TNC well on its way to at least getting a top 3 finish, if not even going all the way and claiming victory as well. So TNC for me would have to be the impressive team. But with that in mind too, of course, I think obviously honorable mention J-Storm, right? And J-Storm's matched up against them. How about J-Storm and the fact that they're where they are? That's pretty incredible too.
J-Storm will be my most impressive team regardless of the results if they win one more series.
Okay.
Like, regardless of who wins the tournament, if J-Storm wins one more series, they will impress me. But as of now, they've beaten Beast Coast, Gambit, and Team Liquid. So for me, going into this tournament, I said I thought Team Liquid was going to get bottom 4. So the fact that they beat Team Liquid in my eyes is still not that impressive. So, like, if they could beat TNC or even just make top 4 by winning the next round of the lower bracket, J-Storm will impress me.
All right. And then the ultimate question we asked at LD, we have to ask ourselves now that we're down to 12 teams, and on this show, by the next podcast, we will know the actual winner of the event. Who the hell's winning this thing, BSJ? Who is winning MDL Major, the first major of the season?
I said it at the start, and I know it's a cop-out, but I said it at the start, so I can't really feel bad for it. I said TNC is going to win at the start, and I think they're going to win it still. So
Okay, sticking with TNC. I'm going to go TNC as well. I just talked about how impressive I have been with watching them, and maybe I've had the chance to actually watch them more than some other teams, so perhaps that's part of it too at this major, but they have been looking so good. I go back to their matchup against the J-Storm team that's had a good run, but you did bring up a fair point with the matchups to get here in the first place. I think they're easily getting to the upper bracket finals and then on their way to claiming the title of MDL champion. So you and I both on the same page. No argument here for me. But I know it's going to be a fun tournament finish to see how it all plays out, and still so much can happen. Again, there's so many questions. The idea that EG could potentially be knocked out in just a couple of matches is crazy, but it is certainly possible with who they have to go up against. So that continues on tonight as we're doing the live show. Starts at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight with the first series of Vici Gaming versus Fighting Pandas from that winner bracket there. So there we go. The MDL Major going to be continuing. So much more to watch and be entertained by. A couple of other notes before we do wrap up, though. Pain Gaming disbanded, by the way. Pain Gaming announced earlier today, well, maybe late last night. Either way, they announced that they disbanded, of course, a team from South America. No longer a team. We'll see where their players end up eventually. Of course, a full Brazilian squad right there that we're looking at 40R, HFN, Lelis, Diolacor, and 444. They're one position. So they were at the minor. They went winless at the minor. Who knows? Who knows where they're going to end up? But any notes on that?
Yeah, I mean, your other note, just I kind of want to group these two things up, and your other note is that Madara leaves Adfinum, and I think in the current system right now, if a team performs really poorly at the minor, it's hard to validate staying together, whether that means you kick one or two players, whether or not you just completely disband entirely. That's pretty much the problem with our system that we're going with right now. I think the minor helps out a lot for teams that are on the cusp of greatness, but for the teams that are on the cusp of that cusp, they're kind of just fall flat. You make like $2,000 each for 2 months of work, and then you call it a day. It's like, you can't validate to each other that that's enough to stay together, especially since losing in Dota is just so frustrating. Like, I think what the average viewer can't really comprehend is, imagine how upset you get in a pub when you're losing and how frustrating that is. Imagine being in a team setting, where you're always losing together, and there's just that little bit of tension that evolves over time, and being right there for so long, or being so close to, in the minor and stuff, it's just so stressful and so demoralizing that for me, it makes a lot of sense that teams like that will either disband or go through change. So it's sad to see, but at the same time, it doesn't surprise me, which is sad.
Well, and I mean, you're absolutely right, and we've touched on it a couple of times already. The whole tier 2+ scene there's something that continues to need to be done to help it make sure it sustains and develops players for the future, because we have a lot of great players right now, but it's who knows how long things are going to last before things start going downhill. But as of right now, it is working out, but again, we're talking about the future and what's going to come of it.
Exactly.
I will say of those, I'm a little less surprised by the Madara one. I think Madara, not only in the past, has shown that he can play on some top-tier teams, but at Phenom is dealing with the European region that we keep stressing. You got X-Liquid, you got Secret coming back, you got OG.
They had their one shot.
Exactly. To even qualify for the minor again is certainly not guaranteed. So I think that's understandable. Pain, being in South America, I am a little more surprised by that, but
that's fair.
It's their decision, and maybe some behind the scenes. You never really know. Some tensions, as you pointed out, perhaps part of it. So. That's it, though. I think we covered what we wanted to. As far as our podcast show goes this week, again, recapping a little bit, but also previewing plenty more to come. And one more time, a huge shout-out to LD for joining us. Awesome to have such a legend on the podcast, and looking forward to hearing his cast and more throughout tonight as well as the rest of the event. But BSJ, anything else before we wrap up?
Let's go IG, even though I love NA.
NA Dota looking strong right now, but IG is as well, going from the minor. Will they be a major champion on top of that? We're going to find out. Will it be TNC as we predict? Will it be IG? Will Beast Coast go all the way? Who the hell knows? Anything can really happen the rest of this tournament, but ladies and gentlemen, enjoy watching it. We'll see you guys next week, as always, every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Until then, have a good night. The Wombo Combo Podcast coming to a conclusion.